Hey guys, hope this video finds you well, and this is going to be my review of episode 2 of the first series of Amazon Prime's new science fiction comedy. It's from Greg Daniels and it's called 5 Stars. The series is called Upload and this episode is called 5 Stars. So actually this week they announced that this is getting renewed for a second season, and that's pretty quick work for Amazon because it it was announced a week after it premiered, so must have been getting some pretty good buzz. So if you've been liking it, then good news because it will be getting a season 2, as you might have thought it may have done. So I'm going to get into the episode, full spoilers. I wasn't so keen on this episode, I have to say. I think it did feel a bit more quirky at times than the first episode, and yeah, I thought it didn't really get as good a balance as the first episode did of that, that kind of combining the sci-fi elements and the intriguing world building stuff with the comedy. As I said, I did praise the comedy in the first episode. I thought it worked well and I think it added something, but there was also a good mix of that and the ideas and the character drama. And I think this episode, for some reason, wasn't quite that right balance. It was a solid episode, quite a quick sort of watch, because now the first episode was 45 minutes, but after that they've shortened them to about half an hour each, probably a good length for the sort of show this is. But the actual title 5 Stars comes from the fact that in this like reality, when like Nora goes on like a date off one of these dating apps and they're about to have sex, they can give each other ratings out of 5, and this becomes a theme of the episode because it pops up again with something to do with Nora's workplace and her job later. But the episode sort of opens with her with this date, and another quite interesting touch is that they both have to give consent, but it's not like this sort of like normal consent where obviously you have to give it to one another before you sleep together. They actually have to say it into like the app, into like the voice thing, to make the app know then they've agreed to have sex together. So that's this sort of odd but interesting little add-on, and we see them getting down to having sex. And it's soon revealed that the guy she's having sex with is actually a bit of a jerk. He's a bit full of himself. He makes this comment about like giving her 5 stars, and then as he's leaving, he cockingly kind of says, "I know if you could, you would give me 6 stars." So that's the sort of guy this jerk is, and it's then revealed that he's tricked her into giving him 5 stars. And what I mean by that is because he kind of says, well, naturally you'll give me 5 stars, I gave you 5. And then she finds out he actually only gave her 4 because she looks on the site and it comes up, and you see some comments, and the sort of punchline to the scene is that she actually like throws a drink out the window at him or something. So a nice little payoff, but it's played for comedy obviously at the end, but it's kind of again digging into some of the themes and some of the ideas in this show. So this idea then, this kind of superficial idea, but something you can see becoming reality in the future, the way things are going, then not not only could you have sex through these dating apps, but you get to rate people on such a thing as like their quality in having sex. So the same way it becomes common to rate movies or music online with 5 stars, you can actually do that for a physical relationship. And it becomes this thing of being on public display almost, and being reduced to such supposed qualities. But this becomes a big thing for Nora in this episode because, as we found out in the first episode, her father wants to be uploaded. His wife has passed on. She went to the other side, so she's now in like Lakeview. So he would like, because he's decided he wants to be with her in the afterlife, so he wants to get the upload treatment. But the problem is he's really poor. He's struggling to afford it. And so this is something Nora wants to do for him, so that he's got that peace of mind that he will in fact be able to join in his late wife in the afterlife. And I think this is one of the strong points of this series so far, exploring this sort of thing. There's a very humane kind of idea behind it, and I mean, if we did live in this sort of future, you can imagine it would bring up these sorts of conundrums. So in this episode, Nora goes to her boss and asks her to sign off on it, because if she can get a signature from her employer, then it will become so. Her father can get what he wants. But her employer's quite cocky and sort of playing with Nora, and she's saying things like, well, you need to get your score up. And again, that goes back to like the 5-star rating system, but she gives her like a target. You need to get up to this mark, and I tell you what, if you do it, I'll sign the release form. I'll sign the form for your father. And Nora's basically cutting to the chase, but all you have to do is sign it. And it cuts to the meat of the matter nicely, because it is that ridiculous thing where it's no skin off her boss's nose. No, she's not going to lose anything. If it's this thing of she can just do something nice and something that's just, and that's give Nora's father the peace of mind. But instead, she just abuses her power, and she likes to play this game. And again, I think it gets into this whole idea of using people as targets, using people as numbers, and not treating them like human beings, which obviously already happens in the modern world now. So you could imagine it would happen like tenfold if such things as this did exist in the future. So it's quite a miserable episode for Nora, because she constantly has to do things to try and get her score up. And that's why when Nathan contacts her and wants to talk to her, because he's having a rough time adjusting, she's not really there for him a whole lot. She kind of gives him the brush off the first time. And it's because she has to try and stay in touch with her other clients. She has to try and get her score up really with them as much as possible. So I think the whole 5-star theme is actually the best part of the episode. So we see like quite late on in the episode where there's this kid, for example, Dylan his name is, who's in the afterlife in Lakeview, and he's kind of depressed because this other guy who he used to play video games with online suddenly isn't replying to him anymore. He's decided, I've grown out of that now. I'm much older. And again, I think this is another like add-on of the series, because I think that the other guy that Dylan was playing with was on Earth, was still alive, so you can obviously have this connection through video games. So again, that's a nice little touch, and I think that's why Dylan can't talk to him, can't find out why he's like cut off contact. So that's something that Nora finds out for Dylan. And it's just then this guy, this kid has now grown up. He's a teenager or what have you. He's older and he's moved on to like what he sees as more mature things. So he just doesn't have that interest anymore of playing with Dylan. And again, I think this is quite a real sort of concern. I think sometimes when people play these games online and they're playing with people who they know online but they've never met before and they can't actually see them. I think that's quite a realistic sort of concern that parents would probably have about what happens when the other party sort of moves on, when they decide they're too old to play these games, sort of thing. So it does actually get into quite a realistic concern. So Nora tries to let Dylan down lightly, and Dylan doesn't take too well to it. He says sorry, but you failed as an angel. And she kind of takes it alright, says maybe that's true, and he only gives her 3 stars, and that's a blow because she's trying to get her star rating up. What follows is quite a silly scene because we get this new character played by William B. Davis, who fans of the X-Files will know, of course, the cigarette smoking man in the X-Files. And he's like this quite sort of rich jerk who along with his brother created some sort of like tech idea. They were like entrepreneurs and made a lot of money, so they're very rich, or they were rich. So when Nathan introduces himself later, he obviously knows who he is straight away. So we get this scene where the William B. Davis character is like playing this game of like shoot them up like clay pigeons type thing, and so Nora becomes like the target. She becomes like the clay pigeon, and she's making like a bird type noise. I think this is an example where the comedy and just how kind of quirky and twee it gets is just a bit too much. It feels more like a set piece than actually something that needs to be here to serve the story. It's played up as too much of like a comedy moment, and it's just kind of cheesy, and it's like demeaning for her character. It's quite a cringeworthy moment, and I'm not sure necessarily in a good way, but it continues the narrative because he also only gives her, I think he might have only given her 2 stars, but certainly he doesn't give her any more than 3 stars. So her score is again way down from what it needs to be. And Nathan sees this and he kind of recognises what's going on, or he certainly knows that she needs better ratings. So he calls her over and he just starts giving her all these 5-star ratings out of nowhere, just because he obviously cares about her and there's this attachment. And that's when she opens up, and again I think they have some nice scenes together. The 2 leads are good, and I did invest in their relationship in the first episode. I guess one problem is then it escalates a bit too quickly, because I sort of thought that in the first episode where she opened up with him quite quickly, and she was gave Nathan, her first name and stuff like that, which goes against the rules. And here she opens up quickly. She does tell him the problem with the father and all that, and he's there to listen. And it's quite a nice scene. It's a little bit on the cheesy side, to be honest. And I think that's one of the dangers. Then this could end up becoming a bit too quirky as a series, a bit too like twee, but it's certainly a likeable relationship between Nora and Nathan, and I think what Nora goes through in this episode and the whole 5-star thing is the strong point of the episode. So just to focus a little bit more on Nathan for a minute, he's still having problems fitting in, and this is the episode you might have heard about where we're introduced to the talking dog, because another like selection in this world that Nathan can make is then if you feel like a pet, they have a selection of different animals and you can like purchase or what have you. And this other like resident comes along and he says, hey, you can have this dog if you want. I've used him up. So he gives him like this Labrador, and Nathan only finds out when he gets it back to his room that it's actually a talking dog who can give him advice. So the dog, whose name I forget now, but he hears about Nathan's problem and the fact that he almost killed himself, and gives him advice, because Nathan does this whole speech about he misses being like a grown-up, mature man on Earth. He misses the fact that women were attracted to him, the fact that he could make a difference to people's lives. So the advice from the talking dog is that you need to make communication. You need to make contact with your fellow man. So find 3 or 4 different males here in the residence and communicate with them, contact them, and if you do that, you'll feel much better. You'll experience like different masculinity and stuff. So that's the advice he gives to Nathan, and that's when Nathan starts having all these different problems. We see him just really having differences, being out of the loop when it comes to like these different characters. We see just short examples of how these other residents are very different from him, and then we see Nathan and the thing with, as I said, the William B. Davis character. Another thing that is going on in the episode is then it's leading up to Nathan's funeral, like his actual funeral down on Earth, and so he's obviously still having contact with Ingrid. And so they're preparing for the big night and after the funeral, because it can be arranged and they actually have sex, obviously through like the app, after the funeral, which is pretty freaky. But once again, this being Ingrid, she's like off living it up, being quite superficial, because she say, of course I'm going to be at the funeral and stuff, and I'm getting ready for a big night together. I'm assuming maybe this is going to be one kind of last thing between them sexually. I'm not too sure how it works, but she's basically at like this clinic and she's having like this fancy sort of facial operation, and so it's that sort of ironic contrast. And Nathan's still in this place and they're getting ready for his funeral, and she's just going crazy with this like expensive sort of like whatever it is, some sort of operation on her face, some sort of like makeup. And so Nathan again is starting to feel like out of the loop, starting to feel then, yeah, maybe his girlfriend's being a bit superficial. And I think that's going to play more into it, because I think that's going to lead to him getting even closer to Nora over time. So actually Ingrid's quite an important character in all this, because the more we see how shallow she is and how she really doesn't care about him, I think the more the more Nathan's going to draw away from her and get closer to Nora. I suppose one thing they could play with at a later date is obviously the whole thing about Ingrid, that she has her place booked in the Haven, then she would actually join and Nathan, and that he's actually like nothing he can do about that now. So you wonder if, as he falls out of love with Ingrid, as you sort of expect it to happen, and he falls in love with Nora, you wonder if that might become a thing where they can reverse that sort of contract, or try to reverse it. So another scene is that she actually goes to buy a sex suit, that being Ingrid, and she goes to like this high market shop. And again, there's some clever stuff going on, because they show the whole process behind these sex suits and just how freaky they are. The fact that there's like a hand thing on it and stuff, and really, and it even freaks out Ingrid, so she runs out all freaked out. So that's going to be interesting. But the other big point of the episode is that Nathan conveniently can't remember the details about his app, the app he was working on with his partner, and what exactly it was. And so we've seen how in the previous episode some files was destroyed, and this episode again brings into question the nature of his death. Was he murdered? Was there suspicious circumstances? And this is brought up again by the William B. Davis character, because when Nathan tells him about the nature of his app, and well, he doesn't, that's the point, he can't remember, and he can't remember the app's name, then the Davis character immediately sort of says, well, it sounds like you were actually murdered. And he tells him the nature of his death, and he's like, oh, sure, sort of thing. So this is actually brought up in this episode, and I think if they go down this route and fully like explore what happened with his death, I think that could be a good, interesting thing for them to do. And so what happens at the end of the episode is Nora's looking into this, because Nathan asks her, well, why is it I can't seem to remember basic information like the app we were working on? So at the end of the episode, Nora looks at this video, and it's Nathan and his partner coming up with this idea for the app, and they meet with this guy from a tech company, and he actually says, yeah, we're really interested in your idea. Let's go in. I'll tell my business partners. And so yeah, Nora knows that now, what the app actually was, and it is this app where you can control your experience in the afterlife. And then she gets like an alert pop up, says 20 minutes to Nathan Brown's funeral. So that's how it ends. So that's actually a really good hook for the next episode, because Nora now has this dilemma. Does she tell Nathan what she's found out? So that was a good ending, and again, I enjoyed the episode a fair bit. There's some interesting ideas. I just maybe wasn't as into it as the first episode, but solid stuff again. And I think one of the questions for me, as in will I keep reviewing the show on the channel, is probably, is there going to be enough content? Is there going to be enough meat for me to discuss episode to episode? At the moment, I think there is enough. I think there's just a danger that it could fall too much into the kind of quirky, silly comedy stuff. Because even if there's quite a lot of the comedy stuff that I enjoy, that still doesn't mean it's the sort of thing you can talk that much about. You may be just going to be commenting on jokes and stuff like that. But so far the balance is enough, then I'm happy to keep reviewing it, and I'm happy with it. But we'll see where it leads. So that's my thoughts on episode 2, and I'll get back into the swing of things. I should be back soon with my thoughts on episode 3 of Upload. But if you've been watching along at home, watching this new Amazon series, then please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you are new to the channel, and be sure to ding the bell on YouTube to get notifications for when new videos go up. But I'll be back with more brand new television reviews coming soon. I'll see you guys later.